thanks for joining in. We have a very interesting session lined up today. We have two industry veterans, Dr. Jitendra Panchal from CDSL, and we also have Aashish Ranjan from Bajaj Finserv. Welcome, gentlemen. So thanks for joining in, gentlemen. I think it's going to be a very interesting session, and we would like to keep it interactive as well. The audience, if you have any questions at any point in time, feel free. So I think you please do make the most of the time that we're getting from two very eminent personalities who spent a number of years in the industry on this particular topic. Thanks for joining, everyone. Probably I'll start with Dr. Jitendra first. So in terms of the topic itself, one, GRC has been an area which has actually been there for ages, and will always seem to be a challenging area in terms of one, compliance and audit are always something which people are afraid of. But probably in an age where the regulator, retail investors are all becoming very touchy about the topic around cyber, and specifically in the regulatory area is also becoming very interesting with the number of regulations which are coming up. One, what we would like to know from you as well as from Aashish would be, what are some of the broad focus areas that you are seeing in the broader industry? Also, in terms of how did you, when this particular question was posed to you, in terms of how did you set up your own compliance function, and how are you enabling your organization to be compliant with the various regulations which are currently coming in, and also in a complex IT environment? And what would be your advice for some of the other market participants, or for some of the smaller firms, newer ones who are actually coming into the space? Probably we'll start with Dr. Jitendra, and then we'll come back to Aashish.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thanks, Siddharth, for this particular question. It's a long question with multiple sub-questions into it. And like when we talk about any particular cyber topic, everyone is, I would say, well educated, and we people are, I would say, we are novice to that particular topic. Since we are managing the entire system, but still we are novice to that thing. So like as far as GRC is concerned, basically like governance, risk, and the compliance, basically any particular organization need to have a proper governance system for that particular one, and needs to understand like what are the various surface attacks that is available to us. Because if one need to identify what are the surface attacks is available, now what are the threat actors is available, because nowadays ransomware is very common, or maybe it is a, I would say, national kind of a threat actor, or maybe some phishing attack or something. So these are the major one which normally talks about for the attack kind of a thing. Now basically the attackers want to destroy everything, whatever may be the way. Okay, so like someone need to have a good visibility in that particular terms. Now when I'm talking about the visibility, means the entire landscape of the entire IT inventory that he should be aware of by any particular organization, because there is one of the any particular weakest link is there, it's going to get compromised. And various tools are available in the market for particular managing any particular security services. So I won't say any particular product or a solution is a good or bad. For me, everything is bad, everything is good, because main major factor for any particular tool is like how you configure, or what are the, I would say, rules regulation that you set for that particular one, that will define the capability and the efficiency of that particular tool. So based on that, which particular tool that you need to define. Now nowadays people talk about Atmanirbharta, the same thing that we wanted to tell, like we need to be Atmanirbhar in that particular terms. So despite of, I would say, banging on a particular tool or a service or something like that, I should be Atmanirbhar in that particular terms. Now what exactly Atmanirbhar in that for the security perspective? Identify, reduce, patch, and technology perspective, like people front, you need to have a very good threat I would say threat hunters, good SOC analysis so that they can detect quickly. And then there are, I would say, various technologies that is available, but we don't get a proper skill set for that particular one. So the skill development is very, very essential for any particular kind of an, I would say, security solution. Now risk, as I mentioned, we need to reduce the footprint, or I would say the surface attack, there is one part of it. And like what are the, I would say, compliance, like of course SEBI is very strong in that particular terms, and like they are dictating, or they are providing the framework, or they are providing the, I would say, the framework, so that people will within that particular framework will try to fit what exactly the best as per your business and all that. So these are the major things that covered up for that particular GRC part.
So the key takeaway from me from whatever you mentioned, Jitendra, is one, getting your basic cyber hygiene right. There may be plethora of tools, but in terms of one, defining baseline security configurations and monitoring and continuous monitoring is what would be a key takeaway from me in terms of let's say monitoring as well as staying compliant. And the other point that you mentioned is around availability of talent and probably being sufficient in certain areas.
Atmanirbhar, there's a keyword.
Atmanirbhar is the keyword, and CDSL is also celebrating 25 years of its 25th anniversary. So congratulations for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ashish, I think certain key points which Jitendra mentioned, from your perspective, being one of the largest financial companies in the country, you do deal with the retail customers, you deal with institutional customers all across the board. So from your perspective, in terms of there are multiple regulations which are coming in. It started off with cybersecurity, big cyber hygiene, cyber resiliency, then the focus on cloud security. So it's an ever evolving field, and you're also working with a lot of third parties as well. So from your perspective, GRC is again a very broad term. You're talking governance, risk, and compliance monitoring, posture management, so much and so more, and also compliance with regulatory requirements. What is your take in terms of what should be the key focus areas, as well as to some of your industry peers, or let's say some of the newer entrants into this particular space? What would be your advice in terms of staying compliant and being focused on GRC?
Yeah, so we at Bajaj Finserv, we have always considered GRC as the base for implementing security. So if you want to implement information security in an organization, then you have to start with the GRC controls. So I'll just give an example. If you see any activity that is being done in information security, it can tie to be one of the parameters, either governance or risk or compliance. Let's start with the first, compliance. So we have to comply with SEBI regulations that are there. We have to implement best practices from ISO 27000 guidelines, or the coming again DPDPA bill also that is coming. So we have to comply to all of these regulations. So for that, what we do, so from a governance perspective, we create policies, procedures, how we are going to operate on that, and accordingly we do a risk assessment where we see what is the if we are going to put any controls, then what is risk versus reward on that. So how much cost is going to be implementing controls, and if any incident happens, then what is the cost of incident that will happen. So from there, again, what are the mitigating controls, VAPT, change management. So many of the controls that need to be put based on what is the risk assessment that we have done on any of the asset or any of the control that we have put there. Then again, from the governance perspective, we can put various measures such as security monitoring, incident management, SOC monitoring. So again, these are the controls to govern on what are the controls we have already put and how it is working in the environment. And out of that, we can also derive now measurement is also necessary. So we have put any control, but whether it is working efficiently or not. So for that, we have security metrics where we measure what are those controls that are there, and accordingly again we ensure that whatever the regulations that are there, we comply to that. So again, if we see any of the controls that we are going to put in our organization, then it comes into this any of the parameters that we have defined as a governance, risk, or compliance. Now, as you correctly mentioned that SEBI is now coming forward with many of the regulations. So starting with cybersecurity requirement, then cloud security requirement. And again, we have got certain working paper on the new cybersecurity and cyber resilience agreement that is going to become circular, that is going to be coming. So yeah, definitely by going through these circulars and implementing them, what I have seen is now they are SEBI has started with the basic controls that, okay, you put the basic controls. Now they are doing a deep dive in those controls and strengthening those controls that we have already put. So for example, if you go into the new upcoming consultation paper that was published for cybersecurity, initially the BCP drill that we are doing, it was on an annual basis that, okay, so once you can do. But now it is being changed to a quarterly basis. So yeah, so now they are strengthening all the controls that have already been put there and implementing all of those controls for all the AMCs that are out there.
No, thanks for that, Ashish. And probably you did mention about a couple of key important points here. One, the new consultation paper which has come out, and also about the two let's say documents or the guidelines specifically on cloud security. Now, what we're seeing is many of the newer firms are digital first, or they're cloud native from day one. So probably if we were to talk about a little bit on the cloud security guidelines of the papers which have come through, and also in terms of what your own journey, in terms of how are you monitoring, how are you staying compliant, because it's not only about you being compliant, but also your extended third parties, because it's also applying to many of your third parties who are actually on cloud and offering services to your organizations. So if you were to look at it, SEBI broadly focuses a lot on cyber resiliency, a lot around key management. We'll not probably talk about the private cloud, but finally on the hybrid side and other services that have been provided with the various service providers. So I'll probably come here to you, Ashish, first, and then go with Jitendra in terms of one, what has your journey been in terms of cloud compliance, as well as how have you taken in terms of implementing DevSecOps, or how are you seeing these requirements? And again, for the newer entrants, what would be your advice to somebody who's actually, let's say, been in a traditional space and moving towards cloud adoption, or have to be compliant with the guidelines? At times, it's not a very easy journey for some of the giants. For the big ones who actually are transitioning, it may be a little easy. But at the same time, the traditional institutions have been a lot more focused on getting the basics right, keeping everything safe and secure. And some of the newer entrants may be taking the easier shortcut towards, not everyone, but some of them have had issues in the past with the regulator. What would be your advice and your own personal experience in terms of cloud compliance and the journey?
I would say that as we are also a new entrant in the AMC market. So whoever is starting in this domain, it is a little more easier for them because they are starting in this. So for example, if they are going into cloud, so they are beginning from the basics here. For older organization that was previously on premises, and they are moving into the cloud, and then that whole transition needs to be done for them, and ensuring that everything that is as per the compliance requirements that has been set by SEBI. So yeah, a little bit difficult on that side, because it is a rigid structure that has already been established to make it a little flexible to ensure that it is complying to the security requirement. So if you are starting the journey, or if you are looking to comply with the cloud security framework that is already there, so the first thing is that ensure that all of your data is inside India. So that is the basic of all the requirement that is coming, that the data localization should be there. So all the data that is there, it is in India. So whenever any instance is created, if you are taking Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, or anything, so ensure that all the data is stored inside India. If you are also engaging with a SaaS platform, then ensure that in their agreement, or whenever you're talking to them, ensure that all the data that is going to be stored on the SaaS platform, it is within the boundaries of India. Then it is very essential to identify that which services you want to put on cloud and which services you want to ensure that it is on the premises. So again, if you are deciding that this solution needs to go on cloud, then again, for that vendor specific, you have to ensure that all of these controls need to be put. So one thing is that you have to be clear on what areas you are going to put on the cloud and what areas you are going to ensure that it is on the on premises. Then again, whenever you are implementing cloud, it is a shared responsibility. So for example, if it is a SaaS platform also, then you are responsible for protection of data. Although the protection of the platform and everything is in the cloud service provider's responsibility, but you are responsible for at least the data. So you have to know that it is a shared responsibility for protection of data or any of the application that we are putting on the cloud systems. If we go to the various requirements that are there in the circular, so there with respect to the agreements, many clauses have been included there. That should be, whenever you are signing an agreement with a CSPs, that you have to include those agreements. Now if it is a already agreement that is already signed, and now some changes needs to be made, so again, amendments need to be done on this agreement to ensure that all of the requirements is covered there. Then again, with the encryption, with key management, there are many security controls that have already been put there. There is certain areas where again some discussion is happening, but we have to ensure that basically all the controls that are already there, we have to ensure that we comply with them. And in case of any issues, then again, we have to ensure that we are complying with all of those controls that are already there.
So Jitendra, again, coming back to you on the same question, in terms of the recent guidelines which have come in on cloud security. what is your point of view in terms of what should be some of the key focus areas,
Yeah.
as well as your advice to the newer entrants?
Okay. So as far as what are the point that even Ashish mentioned, even the same is been framework given by the SEBI. So there are various aspects, and I would say various deep dive that they have done for the any particular principle that they are talking about for this particular framework. So mainly, like I'll just brief upon like what I would like. First of all, what kind of a cloud model that you want to opt for, whether it's a public, hybrid, or I would say private cloud model, or what that suits your business requirement. Now, if there's any particular government, I would say governance GRC portion that we are talking about, it's kind of a roles and responsibility. And it is not that I would say only the CISO or I would say the security team, but it comprises of entire till management level. So even the MD directors and everyone that gets involved into that particular one. So the roles responsibility, the kind of an, I would say the adoption of that particular solution that is also deliberated during that particular board meeting also. So understanding of that particular solution, what that we need to put it up in that particular solution. Again, the CSP responsibility is what Ashish mentioned, like it's supposed to be like MIT compliant, if any particular, I would say, service provider that you want to go for. So it's supposed to be empaneled with a MIT, and even if it's a valid STQC registered vendor that's supposed to be. And then secondly, again, the visibility of any particular data. So because one very good aspect that even SEBI mentioned, like whatever that we want to put it up into cloud, the kind of an audit that we should be able to carry out, it should be accessible and visible to everyone. So in case if I want to audit any particular third party, or I would say the vendor service provider, I should be able to do so. And whatever logs and everything that is available, I should be able to get access to it. So even that kind of a control that is which is required and which needs to be incorporated in our agreement also. So if the one, as Ashish mentioned very clearly, the one like we people have already established our organization, or maybe I would say since 25 years. So we have our own premise solutions and everything. The one who those who are startup solution, it's easier for them to get into that kind of an environment. But for us to put up that particular workload, to define that particular workload into cloud, it's little difficult, because like we need to get that kind of a compliance done, or I would say the kind of a solution that is which is really required. That is what a challenge. Then again, as I mentioned, one of the authority portion that we mentioned, the various security controls that they are talking about in terms of, I would say, vulnerability management, as I would say, VAPT, continuous VAPT that need to be carried out. Now, patch management, generally, when people talk about like maybe on a server portion or maybe on the database or the application part, but what in terms of backend, like what network switches that they are using, or the routers that they're using, or the firewall that they're using, what is that particular patching, how that regularly that they are doing it or not. So those kind of in compliance, we need to get it from the third, basically it's a service provider. So it's a third party for us. So we need to get that kind of a report or get that kind of a visibility from them also. So ultimately, the entire transaction, it's supposed to be very, very transparent in all terms. Like any particular authority, or let's say maybe SEBI wants to carry out the audit, even that is how even they carried out for the on-premise setup also, which is also conducted for us also. The same way they want to carry out that kind of an audit, the logs, or I would say the solution, or maybe the console of the system, or what are the access control mechanism that is available, that is all supposed to be visible and supposed to be controllable to us. And like again, generally people talk about like BCP, or maybe like as Ashish mentioned, like we used to carry out DR drills, but it's supposed to be now it's a quarterly once, that is what mentioned. But it is not like I would say kind of a tick mark business. For in our case, like it is something we run the business from the DR for almost 8 days or 15 days based on my requirement and all that. So it's supposed to be fully functional DR. And so people think like if I put everything onto cloud, I get a very good uptime and all that, whatever the percentage that they're talking about. But ultimately, nobody talks about anything onto, I would say, DR drills, because even that is also one of the aspects that we need to consider. And like when I'm talking DR drill, like as I mentioned, I need to run my business from that particular one. So it's immaterial whether it's a or cloud or it's on premise, right?
So probably 3 or 4 broad areas which are coming out as themes from whatever both of you mentioned. Primarily is in terms of continuous posture monitoring for your cloud, be it whichever CSP you're using. If you've defined baseline security configurations, whatever has been defined by the CSP, you need to have drift monitoring in place. Focus on infrastructure, be it on-prem or on cloud. So I think in terms of resiliency is important. We'll come back to the broader resiliency question, where you're talking about high availability and not just being a check in the box DR exercise, but actually running them properly. And also in terms of vendors. So typically the kind of contractual clauses that you have, be it with the CSP or with any other service provider who's actually providing you services via a cloud-enabled platform, or a SaaS-based solution, you need to have the proper documentation in place, contractual agreements in place, and also given the data sovereignty requirements which have come in, you probably need to take that into consideration, and privacy. Now, with the coming in of the data protection and the privacy bill, that will be another one to actually look at in terms of what type of data you're putting into your cloud estate, and whether you have the ability to actually scan for that and try and secure the data that you put upon the uh, cloud side as well. So I think those are the key areas which are coming up. Both of you have actually mentioned a very key area, which is in terms of resiliency. So probably I would want to draw your attention. If you look at banks, the RBI Master Directive on technology risk, on outsourcing risk also talks about resiliency. SEBI is also focusing a lot on resiliency. And Jiten sir, you did mention about in terms of how you're running the DR drills. But from a broader cyber resiliency perspective, what is your take in terms of attack simulation, or let's say keep considering the third party risk into consideration in terms of how are you making yourself resilient as well as the third parties resilient, and what would be your advice to any of your peers in terms of on the topic of cyber resiliency?
Okay, so like as far as cyber resiliency is concerned, now it's a very hot topic for everyone. Basically, like how soon you can come back to your business after, let's say, attack. See, people generally carries out, I would say, the various different kinds of tools, controls, security mechanism, and everything that is put in place. But that framework will tell you what needs to be put up, what control is supposed to be there, and what not. But how do you measure that? How do you measure the resiliency? So measurement of the resiliency is very much important. Now, I'll put down into different, I would say, like a category of that particular one. So first of all, I'll say like build a competency. Now, when I say build a competency, means first of all, I should know all my assets, whether it's all been covered, whether I would say, what are the weakness points that I'm having it. That is what's most important part of it. What are my surface attacks that I can reduce my surface attack, and mainly asset management. So this will give me the entire gamut of my entire business. Now, what is that I'm covering up? Secondly, build the confidence. Now, adequate measure of risk, know your risk, basically. So continuous regular VAPT that we need to carry out. And have we computed our risk properly? Have we considered, or have we taken any particular exception? How soon that we can, I would say, close that particular exception? That is what important. So that will build the confidence level. Okay, like, yes, this is what the confident, I'm confident about my system setup. The third point that I would like to say is a connection. So basically, when I say connection, it's like know your network. So basically, like, since nobody's, I would say, like independently doing the business, like somewhere or the other, we are getting connected with my third party solution vendor or support partner, or maybe a managed service partner, or somewhere or the other, or maybe giving some outsourced services, like example, case printing and other things. Right. So like we are connected with all the other ecosystems also. So I should know my network very properly. So in terms of my micro segmentation, or people talk about zero trust is a normal common terms now, but like whitelisting, people talk about like only whitelisted things are done. But in a many of the case also, like if I'm doing the international business in that particular term, so whitelisting will be a little challenge in that particular term. So like know your network, that is one of the aspect of it. Then confidence that I mentioned. Now, how much I am confident in that particular one. So now that particular confidence will tell me, because my SOC are my front soldiers, and they know what is happening in that at the border. So they are the first one who will report me the entire thing, and they'll tell me. So how capable are they in terms of, I would say, detecting or getting the alert, and how they interpret well. So I need to have a very good threat hunters, or maybe I would say SOC analyst, which will they are the front people there. They'll tell me what exactly that is going on, and what are the alerts, and what we are getting it, how we are taking it up. It's a false positive, or it's a seriously that we need to consider whether we need to talk to OEM to get that corrective action done or not. So that will give me the confidence. Yes, what are the solutions that I've implemented? Yes, I'm getting alert. Things are working properly. So this kind of a thing. Fifth point, I would say, like, it's a contribution. So it is not that like it's a resource team, or I would say IT risk team or something. It is entire IT, or I would say entire organization. So like that kind of an, be it IT team, network team, security team, ultimately even the management also comes in the picture, or the business also comes in the picture. So because phishing attacks and other thing that generally happens from the business development team or some other team. So those people should be contributing that kind of thing. If they find something malicious or something, I would say, going on, they should be immediately able to relate that kind of a thing. the most important part, 6th point, is like cope up. Like if something happens, how you are going to come back to them, I would say, in the business. So what is your preparedness in terms of that? So basically, like we people talk about like some air gap solutions, or maybe some isolation of a data, or maybe the backup isolation. See, because ultimately in any given point in time, backup is the only solution which will help you during this particular kind of an event, and you need to come back from that particular backup. So the air gap solution that even recent people are talking about. So how soon you can get your data from that particular backup? Now again, there is a challenge. Like what is the recent I would say recentness of a data? So even that is also a crucial part of it. So people talk about zero data loss also. People talk about like how soon you can come out from that particular ransomware attack. Even so, there's a trade-off that we need to do. And even that backup restoration, it has to happen on a clean room environment also, so that I can bring up my system. So this is one that. And control means you should know what you know. Basically, you should know what you know. That is what a very particular term that I'm talking about, because I should be aware of each and every nook and corner of what of my system, where exactly what not, and like all my, I would say, entire IT ecosystem. Like when I'm talking about an entire people skill, they should be aware about what exactly the controls that we are having it. So basically, these are 7 points that I'm talking about, like in terms of getting it measured, like how confident I am on, and how I'm resilient in that particular terms. So there are. This is what basically that I want to put it up on there.
No, thanks for that. Probably, Ashish, any additional points that you'd like to mention on this before you come to the next topic?
No, I agree with what Dr. Jitendra said on this. So that, yeah, severe resilience is basically on how easily we can come back to our normal operations after a cyber attack has happened. The first thing is to basically identify what are critical assets. And once we have identified, then what are the controls that we have put around it to ensure that regular reporting of any incidents is happening around that, or regular VAPT, continuous VAPT is being done around that, so that all the vulnerability that is detected, it is closed on proper time. And then any such reporting is happening, then what are the actions that we are taking on that, and how soon we can restore from the previous backup that we have already done, and then restore and then continue our work that is important for us. So yeah, I think Dr. Jitendra covered majority of the points there. So that is okay. All.
So, Dr. Jitendra, there's a request from one of our audience members, if you can probably quickly summarize the 7 points that you mentioned.
Okay, fine.
Have an acronym for it so that people can actually remember those 7 focus areas.
Okay, so I'll call it as like people talk about, even people say like 5C, 4C, 7C, something over there. So I'll put it up like a 7C kind of a thing. Like first of all, build competency. The second one, build confidence. Okay. Third one, know your networks. So connection. Okay. The fourth one is be confident what exactly in my system is like. Okay. Then the fifth one is contribution. So it is not the only security team, it's total organization. The 6th point is cope up, how you are going to bring your business again. The 7th point is control. So what are the controls that you have implemented? So these are the seven points.
Sure. Thanks for that. The other related topic which comes up in this particular space is around the software supply chain security. So you mentioned that you probably need to have a complete view of all of your assets, your real estate, which is there in your network and others. And we've seen a lot of recent attacks, primarily where people didn't know, like for example, Log4j, when it happened, people were literally struggling to see which are those third-party components, what are those software which they've built in-house or from a third party, which had that particular zero-day vulnerability. So you're seeing a lot of regulators, be it in Europe, US, even India, maybe and others are also evaluating it specifically in terms of looking at your SBOM, which is your software bill of material, in terms of what you have, what are the third-party components, and you maintaining an inventory and patching specific requirements, vulnerabilities in that particular software component if required. Your thoughts in terms of how difficult would it be, or how easy would that be to actually comply with, given the vast nature of, let's say, different type of software, enterprise, also at a, let's say, local level that people are typically using. Ashish, if you want to go with that, then we'll come to Dr. Jitendra.
Sure. Yeah. So again, nowadays, the vast majority of developers, basically, they don't develop any software from the ground up. They rely on various third-party resources like pre-built libraries or open source components. And whenever we are using all of these components in building our application, then again, as we are talking about a software supply chain, it is built up of multiple components. And if any one of the component is vulnerable, it makes the whole software or the whole application vulnerable. So there are various measures that are there which we can ensure that basically this whole supply chain, it remains strong. So again, if as we said, regular VA when we are doing, then when a vulnerability assessment is done, then each individual components, if any vulnerability is there, then that is detected. Now, sometimes it happens that for example, any library that is there, in that we are not able to patch that. If there is any vulnerability detected on those libraries, we are not able to patch those vulnerabilities on a regular basis or on a timely basis. So it makes the whole application insecure. So we have to ensure that if any vulnerabilities are found in any of the component of the application, it shall be patched on a timely basis. So again, when we are doing a secure code review, if we find any of the vulnerabilities in regarding, for example, application code review that we are doing, so if in case of any vulnerabilities, we have to ensure that patching is to be done on a regular basis. Now we have also getting notifications from certain for various modules of any software. So for example, if any of, for example, I take an example, Drupal, and there are various modules that are there that are using for software development. So if any of the module is there, then we get a notification from certain that a vulnerability has been found. So it is our responsibility to ensure that our proper patching is done. And because again, that vulnerable part that is there, we have to ensure that it does not make the whole application vulnerable.
So, Dr. Jitendra?
Yeah. So, like, see, as far as any particular vulnerability is concerned, like everyone will be facing one of the challenge and problem is that like patching. Now, the thing is that whenever we ask for the downtime for the patching, application will team definitely will say like, no, I won't be able to give you downtime because certain releases are happening, certain things are going to upgrade or certain new additional functionality that is coming up. So there is always a challenge in terms of, I would say, getting the system patched on a regular time. Now, like NCIPC, then even certain, all these people are keep on, I would say, alerting, providing CVs and everything. So like that's a responsibility for like entire IT team to get that know and like how soon that we can patch in that particular system. So as far as I would, again, I'm repeating the same thing, like asset management is most important critical part, be it hardware or be it software in any particular domain. So like that is what most critical part of it. And like as long as we get that kind of a CV information or any kind of an information from the third party, most of the time, even for the security vendors also, they also provide some kind of an alert. So I would say kind of an intimation for that particular one. So that needs to get patched immediately. So as far as software are concerned, the most important part, DevSecOps, which is what now most critical, crucial part of it, because at the time of development of any particular code, if it is in-house development, that needs to be reviewed from the security perspective also. So if anything that needs to be improvised or need to be improved upon at the time of putting up the codes and everything, so that will take care of that kind of an aspect, so that the number of, I would say, VAPT that we carried out, the number of readings, or I would say the observation will be less in that particular terms, so that kind of a corrective action will be reduced in that terms. Yeah.
So if I were to just look at my takeaways from whatever you just mentioned, one is continuous monitoring, be it scans with SAST, DAST, water sources. Look at the remediation, look at the threat intel which is coming in, look at your asset inventory, be it hardware or software, and what gets impacted. Do the prioritization so that you can actually do a remediation program and keep track of it. And also, one related topic which comes up is the requirement of boards. Most of the boards today want real-time information in terms of cyber. So cyber is actually being categorized as an existential threat. If you look at the World Economic Forum report on cyber for most of the FIs and regulated entities. So from that perspective, in terms of real-time monitoring, in terms of reporting, any best practices, anything that you have implemented within your firm or something which is aspirational in terms of CISO dashboards, in terms of real-time view of your risk posture that you typically are reporting to your board or that you like to have?
Yeah, so I'll put it like of course now reporting till MD level or maybe at the chairman level, maybe at the board level, that is what essential now. So if anything happens, or I would say like kind of a reporting that we used to do, we generally conduct a regular meeting for that particular one, and like all the key stakeholders, or we call it as a KMP people, like they get together and like we discuss about anything on the dashboard part of it. In fact, like we have given the dashboard access to each and every key members. So even they can view it from their particular desk also. So like it's visible to everyone. So as long as how much you are transparent to your management, to your team, that is most crucial part of it, so that anybody can view and anybody can get that dashboard out of it, and it will show me like how my factory setup is going on, how my, I would say, entire work, life cycle is going on. That gives enough confidence in particular terms. Even as I mentioned, like resiliency measurement, the similar way, like what are the security measurement that we carried out. So how many what threats that we received, what is that we protected, how we protected, and how we take a corrective action. So that kind of a reporting also that has been happening now. So like in fact, SEBI also mentioned like yes, that needs to be kept on monitoring to the even SCOT member also. We call it as a standing committee on the technology, that needs to be reported to them also. And simultaneously on a periodic basis, we need to report to SEBI also.
Yeah, so I agree that so if you look into an organization, the board of directors or board members, they are ultimately responsible for information security in an organization. I know CISO is the implementation part, but the whole accountability lies with the board
But
of directors
that,
there.
this is one of the most dangerous jobs in the world right now.
Yes, definitely. I agree with that. Yeah. So yeah, so again, so basically, and not only board, so basically the leadership that is there here, including the CEO and all the HODs and everyone. So if you want to implement any information security controls, you will have to take their accord also. So I'll just give an example. If you have to implement a DLP policy, for example, in your organization, then unless you have an accord from them, unless you have an ask from them, okay, so what are the policies that needs to be created for each of the department, we will we'll implement DLP solution in our organization, but no policies have been created. What is the use of that? So we have to have an involvement from the leadership also, where they are also agreeing on what are the various asks that are there from information security, and they are also agreeing on the importance of implementing those controls in the organization. So yeah, definitely now involvement of the board and the leadership team in various information security decisions is very critical nowadays, where we not only have to just implement it for the sake of implementation, but we have to make them understand also on why we are doing this, how it is going to benefit the organization, and how it is beneficial for all of them in the long run.
And probably one more point is people are also taking a risk-based approach. Instead of just doing rampant risk assessments whenever you have threat intel, knowing in terms of what type of threats you currently have, what is the impact of your simulation exercise. So you can actually do an exception-based testing whenever the control is failing. So one, defining controls, defining the control measurement, monitoring that, reporting that, and also in terms of any exceptions. Following up on that and doing a deep dive risk assessment or a risk-based assessment is something that we are moving towards, is what I'm understanding from whatever answers that I've got from Dr. Jitendra as well as from yourself, Aashish. And also the point that boards are independent. They are the custodians, they are the end custodians. So it's not only about reporting to your MD or CISO. CISO's role is one of the most dangerous roles today. We know that. And you are trying to pass it on to the board as well in terms of letting them know about what's happening, keeping them abreast. And also, we owe that to the different stakeholders, be it to our investors and others. So I think absolute transparency is something which is required, and people also want to see in terms of what's happening. So, so I think those are some of my key takeaways from this particular section. We're now opening it up to more questions, and appreciate any other points I might have missed that you would want to mention, Dr. Jitendra, as closing statements in terms of one, for anybody who's actually doing a revamp of their entire GRC function, looking at what is the future trends, what will be your three, let's say, takeaways or advice to anyone?
So like the three takeaways, like there is no such three takeaways. It's a crucial part, crucial role for everyone. It's basically the responsibility. It's a united responsibility. But the thing is that you should know your, I would say, organization, or I would say IT landscape very thoroughly, properly. And the thing is that all the solutions are available in the market, but what suits your organization, which is suitable for your business, you need to evaluate that. It is not a rate race, like if someone is going on, like we need to go think about that kind of a solution. We need to evaluate that. And like whatever solution that we implement, get a full total ROI out of it. The thing in terms of, I would say, whatever we have implemented, get it configured, or I would say setting up the rules properly so that we can get effective benefit out of it. That is most part of it. And one portion that we I would say left out, like because we talk about within the organization, but like we are interconnected, like all 8 MIS are, we are interconnected. So like we share some kind of a data or kind of a business aspect. So we are all interconnected. So we should know how the interconnection that had happened. Even sometimes, as I mentioned in one of my points, like we talk about third party risk management also. But it is not limited to third party. It is, I would say, one more level down. It's a fourth party, because it's like my data center. Okay, data center, I have that agreement with the data center, but like in turn, it's a backend agreement with my, I would say, a UPS vendor or maybe some other vendor, likewise. So there is even subcontracting that is happening. So you should know the entire life cycle of that particular third party risk management that people are now talking about. So even that needs to get covered up. So ultimately, from the business perspective, from the individual company perspective, and like how I'm interconnected with my internal MIS or other, I would say, other organization. These are all connectivities are all interconnected. If someone gets affected or someone gets alert, we need to be like, I would say, pass on that information very quickly and sharply so that like people can take the corrective action out of it. So basically the communication is most important and the collaboration is most important part of it.
Perfect. Thanks for that, sir. Ashish, over to you.
Yep. So I would just say by starting that information security is everyone's responsibility. And yeah, so yeah, we have to take all the employees with us in this journey where we are securing all our assets, all our basically our organization. We are securing our organization to ensure that all the assets that we have, or everything is secure, no incidents are happening, proper awareness sessions are happening. So yeah, we have to ensure that there is a ask from, we are taking the leadership also along with us. We are ensuring that the risk versus reward that we are discussed, that we are doing. So how much implementation, how much security solutions is to be implemented, that we are doing as per how much risk that is the organization is facing from outsiders. So yeah, these are certain takeaways that I think that everyone can take from this.
So I think we have a question. It says, Mike, how did you handle a cyber attack? What are some of the mistakes and oversights that you would see other businesses repeating? And as a beginner in cybersecurity landscape, what are your 3 top recommendations to get started on how to prepare to communicate and collaborate during a cybersecurity incident? That's a good question.
How to handle cyber attack? No one can handle that. No one can handle that. So the thing is that, like, if something happens, like how well you are prepared, that is one of the best part of it. How well you are prepared. What are the mistakes or oversight made that you could see the business repeating? Okay, so the mistakes and oversight, as I mentioned, like there are certain weak points, I would say, available in the organization, because of which the hackers get then, I would say, access to your control system. So that is where I'm keep on repeating, like you need to reduce your surface attack. So what are the, I would say, surfaces like open, or maybe the vulnerability, or I would say the threat surface that is available? You need to try to cover up that, and if possible, avoid as long as using the legacy system, or I would say the old operating system in that particular organization. Ensure that you patch up all your system on time, and like whatever the, I would say, the alerts or CVE that you get it patched on time, be it resistance from the application side or whichever, but get that patch immediately. That is what most important part of it. And the thing is that avoid people talk about zero trust environment, and people talk about whitelisting approach and all that. So as one of the point that I mentioned, you should know your network, your connectivity, your interconnect very properly. How you are sharing your data, what data that you are sharing, because ultimately you are the custodian, you are the, I would say, owner of that particular data. How that has been shared with your corresponding entity, that is what most important part of it. I hope that has been answered. Yeah.
And probably I'd just like to add on that having a proper incident response plan. So typically, whenever there's an incident, people always focus on getting forensics. But I think not only the forensic, but also in terms of trying to contain the attack and how quickly. Like again, this is the point that you made already in terms of how quickly can we go back to normal operations would be key, and also keeping the line of communication. So the days and time of actually not sharing or how bad an attack is. If you're trying to hide, there's nothing more worse than that, because you have to be honest in communication with all the stakeholders, be it the regulator,
Absolutely.
be it your customers, your stakeholders, your investors. That will be key. And also in terms of if you've been hit by a ransomware attack and others, probably not giving in, having the right set of skills, or if you don't have the skills within your organization, bring in professionals to actually handle the incident, because you will end up spending more while trying to save pennies. I think that is something that I would like to add. Anything from your side, Ashish?
Yeah, so I think you covered most of the points. You and Dr. Jitendra covered most of the points. So yeah, definitely we should have a proper incident management process set up in case any such incidents happen. Then a proper plan of action should be there on what actions need to be taken. And I would just add that proper testing should also be done on those type of actions that, okay, so we are incident testing that, okay, so in case any such incident happens, and for example, from drill side, so any ransomware attack happens, then what action needs to be taken, so that testing is proper is also done for all those sample incidents.
Thank you. Hopefully we answered your question. If we don't have any more questions, I think thanks for a great session. And is there one more? I think there's one more. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for brilliant session.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks to Team Cybersecurity as well.